My name is Evelyn Carter. I'm 68 years old, a retired nurse, and I've been widowed for many years. All my life, I believed I was a responsible mother. I bought my son a house, paid off his debts, and even shared my retirement savings with him. Then one day, I logged into our joint account and realized the money I'd set aside for emergencies me lifeline was gone. A few hours later, I saw my daughter-in-law post a photo on social media, a diamond necklace glinting under perfect lighting, captioned, "He always knows exactly what I want." In that moment, something clicked. They hadn't changed. I just hadn't woken up until now. 7:30 in the morning. The kitchen clock had just chimed for the second time, and the gulls outside were already crying. I arranged the last batch of warm croissants onto a platter, just as I heard an engine cut off in the driveway. I rushed to pour the oatmeal from the pot into a small ceramic bowl, placing Lily's favorite strawberry jam beside it. She once told me that as long as breakfast was made by Grandma, even plain cereal tasted like a fancy dessert. Honestly, if it weren't for Lily, I wouldn't go to all this trouble every week. Daniel and his family came by nearly every weekend. They'd eat, then leave, sometimes helping themselves to my milk or orange juice on the way out. Brittany didn't even ask anymore. She'd casually open the cabinet in my bathroom and toss my skincare products into her purse. "Mom, your cleansing oil is better than mine," she said last week with a syrupy smile. I didn't respond. I just brewed another pot of tea and forced myself to stay polite. Right on cue. They arrived today too. Lily ran in first, all baby lotion and shampoo, diving into my arms. She was still wearing that little dress with dinosaurs on it, laughing as she asked, "Grandma, did you make strawberry or blueberry jam today?" "Strawberry," I told her, lifting her up and kissing her forehead. "Because last time you said the blueberry was too tart." She giggled and told me I had the best memory, that I was the greatest grandma in the world. She said it every week, and yet every time, it still melted me. Daniel and Brittany came in behind her. Brittany wore a beige knit dress, swinging her purse as she took off her sunglasses and let out a yawn. "Mom, are you still using the same coffee beans? This tastes like water. I could really go for something stronger," she said while scanning the kitchen. "Do you still have soy milk in the fridge?" "It's almost gone. I saved you a bottle yesterday," I said, handing her a mug and pulling her usual cocoa powder from the cabinet. She took the mug with that same polite but distant tone. "Thanks, Mom. You always think of everything." Daniel sat down at the kitchen island, scrolling through his phone, and grabbed a croissant I just pulled from the oven. He devoured it like it was a chore. "That chicken you had in the fridge last week was pretty good. I made 2 dinners out of it. Brittany liked it too. If you pick up more next time, I'll take it home." "I planned on it," I said, setting out the silverware from the dishwasher. "There's some unopened chicken breast in the fridge. Take it with you when you go." He nodded. "We've been ordering out way too much. Can't keep it up. Britt says I'm getting a belly." Brittany rolled her eyes but didn't deny it. I didn't comment. I just slid the fruit bowl toward them. "How have you two been?" "Busy on my end," Daniel said, biting into a strip of bacon. "New project. Trying to raise funds. It's promising. Just long cycles before we get paid. Everything's slow these days." "Same here," Brittany added. "The company laid off 3 middle managers last month, so now we're all doing double the work. I'm dead tired." She said it with a half smile, barely looking worn out. But the diamond ring on her finger flashed twice in the morning light. I paused. Was it a new one? The center stone looked bigger than I remembered. I didn't ask. I wouldn't. "Mom," Daniel said, turning to me casually. "Mortgage payments due this week, and I'm a little tight on my card. Can you transfer it like last time, from your account?" "I mean, of course." I started clearing the dishes. "Use what you need. Don't stress about it." He nodded, relaxed, and helped himself to another scoop of scrambled eggs. I didn't say much else. He'd said like last time too many times over the years. I'd lost count of how many last times there'd been. I'd been living in the role of the agreeable mother for far too long. Especially after my husband passed, Daniel became my only family. I got used to bending over backward to meet his needs. Lily sang a nursery rhyme between spoonfuls of cereal. Brittany chuckled at something on her phone, reading out bits of social media updates. Daniel was hunting for the remote, wanting to catch the midday financial news. By the time I finished the dishes, they were already lounging on the couch like it was their own living room. And I didn't blame them. After all, I was the one who once said this would always be their second home. I said that years ago, and I meant it then. After breakfast, Lily sat cross-legged on the floor, drawing with crayons. I stayed by her side, watching her tiny fingers sketch the two of us holding hands. Beneath it, she scrawled in crooked letters, Grandma and me. Always together. My eyes welled up, but I smiled and stroked her hair. She was still the reason I believed some things were worth holding on to. It was another morning, and I woke up earlier than usual. The curtains were still drawn, the room dim, but my hand instinctively reached for the pillbox on the nightstand. I tucked the small white tablet under my tongue. My heartbeat had been acting up lately like static from an old radio, sometimes clear, sometimes fuzzy. I knew it wasn't an emergency, but it wasn't nothing either. I sat up, pulled on my robe, and headed to the kitchen, boiled some water, brewed tea, toasted a couple of slices of bread. Outside the window, a cardinal landed on the fence and fluttered its wings. It came almost every morning, and I'd named it Charlie. Charlie showed up every day, unlike my family, who only came around when they needed something. I figured Daniel and his family would visit again this weekend. Brittany had mentioned signing Lily up for ballet classes, expensive ones. They hadn't said it out loud, but I knew they were hoping I'd chip in. I didn't want to think about the numbers anymore. But the heaviness in my chest wasn't something a cup of black tea could wash away. By noon, I drove to the hospital. It was a heart checkup I'd scheduled 2 months ago. EKG, blood draw, stethoscope, every step felt routine, like I was back in the system I once worked in. Only this time, I was the patient. Dr. Heather, a woman in her early 30s, was kind and attentive. I could tell she was actually listening when she printed out the EKG results. Her brow furrowed. We need to start thinking long-term. There's more rhythm irregularity than last time, she said, scanning the report. We can't ignore this. I suggest creating a dedicated medical budget just in case. I have some money saved, I said quietly. She nodded. That's good. But I also recommend designating a medical proxy, someone who can make decisions for you in an emergency. It's important. I nodded and gave her a soft smile, though my voice came out hollow. My son will handle it. He's always said he would. She hesitated for a moment, as if debating whether to speak, then simply moved on. The sun was sharp when I stepped out of the hospital. I put on my sunglasses and stood in the parking lot, letting the breeze hit my face. I'd always assumed there was more time to get things in order, but her words clanged in my ears like a warning bell. When I got home, my fingers still felt a little cold. Maybe it was time to move that emergency fund to a separate account. It was the most carefully guarded bit of savings I had left, untouched for years. After all, I was getting older, and I had chronic conditions. Daniel had once insisted we make the account joint, just in case you faint or need immediate help, he said. That was 5 years ago. Now, I felt different. I was no longer the mother who believed they'd always have my best interest at heart. I opened my laptop, typed in my banking information, and logged in. The homepage showed only one name. Daniel Carter. He was listed as the primary holder. I was merely a joint user. I clicked through to the transfer page, but an alert popped up. This account is a joint authorization structure. No big amount withdrawn may be made without consent from the primary account holder. I froze, double-checked my entries, and then clicked into the transaction history. A charge from last week caught my eye, $9,000. It had been pulled from what I thought was my emergency fund. The payment description read, M. Jewelers, Santa Monica. My heart began to stutter. I picked up the phone and dialed the bank's customer service line. The hold music played through 3 full rotations before a voice finally came on. She verified my identity, then said, This transaction was made from your joint account with Daniel Carter. Under our policy, either account holder has full and independent authority to access, withdraw, or spend funds. Even if I deposited all the money, my voice tightened. Yes, ma'am, she replied evenly. All funds in a joint account are considered shared property. We do not evaluate contribution sources. I hung up, my fingertips icy. I thought back to the photo I'd seen days earlier on social media, Brittany in the mirror, snapping a selfie. A diamond necklace glittering around her neck. The caption read, When someone truly knows you, they don't need to ask. I hadn't thought much of it at the time, but now, those initials came back to me. M. Jewelers, Santa Monica. I reopened Facebook and found the post. The comments section was flooded. Wow, that sparkle. Who gifted this? Your man's always been stingy. Brittany had replied. People grow. especially when love is involved. Her coy little lines sliced through me like a blade. I stared at the photo for a long time. My mind raced through the numbers, the price, the timeline. Then the phone rang. Evelyn, it was Doris, my neighbor and an old colleague from the hospital. I ran into your son and his wife in Santa Monica the other day. They were in a jewelry store, picking out a necklace. I waved hello. Your granddaughter is just precious, but wow, it looked like they were shopping for something fancy. Daniel mentioned it was a gift from you for their anniversary. My hands went cold. I didn't explain. I just said, yes, they're very happy. After we hung up, I sat there in silence, staring at the diamond necklace in the photo. My fingers curled into fists, the backs of my hands turning pale on my knees. And in that moment, I realized what I had always called support. They had long ago started calling resources. And me, I was never mom. I was just the account that didn't say no. I waited until the next morning to call Daniel. I didn't confront him right away. I kept my tone steady, trying to sound calm. I noticed a charge on the account over $9,000. Did you use that? I was planning to move that money into a separate account for medical emergencies. There was a pause on the other end. Oh, that one, Daniel said, his voice light, almost casual, like he was chewing gum. We used it last week when we bought the necklace. Brittany's birthday's coming up, and our anniversary's right around the corner. I thought it'd be a nice surprise. My throat tightened. You're saying that diamond necklace was bought with the money from my account? Mom, come on. We're family. He chuckled, like he was humoring a child. And it's not just your account, is it? I'm on it too. I could hear my own breathing slow. Daniel, that money was set aside for emergencies. For when I get seriously ill. Well, you're not sick now, are you? The way he said it like a joke made my chest go tight. I paused, forcing back the wave rising in my chest. How could you just take that money and buy jewelry without asking me? Mom, he sighed, his tone shifting to irritation. Didn't you just say last time that Lily's piano lessons were totally worth it? But now a necklace is some big issue. That was over $9,000, I said, my voice raising before I could stop it. This isn't buying a toy. There was a brief silence. Then, faint but unmistakable, I heard Brittany's voice in the background. Is she digging up old stuff again? Daniel lowered his voice. Can you not be so dramatic? You agreed to a joint account. We were all there when you signed the papers. I agreed because you said you'd help manage things. Not because I wanted you spending it freely. You're being emotional, he said sharply, like he was scolding a confused old woman. You said you trusted me. Now you're getting angry over something this small. My fingers went cold, my voice starting to falter. This small thing, do you even know why I live so frugally every month? He went quiet, then suddenly snapped. So what? Now you're keeping score. You want to start tracking which dollars are yours and which are mine. I didn't answer. My heart started to pound, my ears buzzing with pressure. We're family, he went on, his voice layered with guilt and accusation. You've always said you were here to support me. But now, the second something goes wrong, you forget all that. It felt like something inside me cracked like a flame choked by concrete. I could barely get the words out. This isn't a small thing. You took the last bit of security I had. Oh, don't make it sound like we stole from you, Daniel said, exasperated. You set up the account. If you regret it now, whose fault is that? I couldn't take it anymore. I hung up. I sat there frozen at the kitchen table. The tea in front of me still steamed, but my hands were shaking too hard to lift the cup. I didn't know if I was angry, hurt, or just profoundly disappointed. I wasn't stupid. I remembered exactly how the joint account came to be. Lily had just been born. Daniel told me he worried I might collapse at home with no one around to call an ambulance. He said, Mom, if you keep your money with me, I'll always be able to help in an emergency. My eyes welled up back then. I'd felt so cared for, so needed. For the first time since my husband passed, I thought maybe, even in old age, I still had a son who'd be there for me. And now, years had gone by, and no one had ever asked me if I needed that money. Instead, it had been turned into a necklace, dangling from the neck of a woman who had never once said thank you. I stood and walked to the kitchen. My hand had just reached for the kettle when pain stabbed deep in my chest. I braced myself against the counter, gritting my teeth, waiting for the dizziness to pass. A minute later, I slowly sat back down and reached for my phone. I dialed 911. I think I'm having a heart-related episode. I need an ambulance. The voice on the other end was calm, practiced, gentle. I gave them my address, and by then, tears had started to fall. Not because of the pain, but because I finally understood. If I didn't protect myself, no one else would. By the time the ambulance arrived, I was sitting on the kitchen floor, my back against the cabinets, tea spilled across the tiles. They moved quickly, lifting me onto the stretcher, fitting an oxygen tube, sticking a label to my arm. As the oxygen filled my lungs, the buzzing in my ears began to fade. Sound slowly returned to me. Do you have a history of heart disease? One of the EMTs asked. I nodded. Yes, paroxysmal angina. I manage it with nitroglycerin. He gave a short nod, then asked if there was anyone I wanted him to contact. I hesitated. Daniel's name passed through my mind like a flicker of static, but I finally said, no one. He frowned slightly, but didn't press further. At the hospital, they wheeled me into an observation room, gave me 2 injections, swapped my clothes for a patient gown, and laid me on a cold hospital bed. And 4 bag dripped softly above me, while the wind rustled the blinds with a dry whisper outside the window. For over 40 years, I was the one giving shots, checking charts, helping people out of bed. Today, someone else was helping me. I stared up at a hairline crack in the ceiling as tears quietly slipped into my ears. Not from the pain, but from the realization that this body, this aging, scarred body no longer belonged to anyone else. It shouldn't be spent proving devotion, and it certainly shouldn't be sacrificed just to remain someone's good mother. The doctor came in, her voice gentle, but her expression made it clear they didn't want to see me come in like this again. You need to start removing stress from your life, she said. You're getting close to a line. I nodded. I didn't explain. Not because I couldn't, but because I knew no one would really understand. I closed my eyes, and Daniel's words floated back to me. You're not even sick yet. I almost laughed. He didn't even know I had never truly been well. What woman ever is? Not the ones raising children, holding down jobs, taking care of husbands, budgeting every dollar, unclogging broken drains. When are we ever truly healthy? That night, I barely slept. I heard nurses' footsteps shifting in the hallway, machines beeping intermittently. A night nurse gently adjusted my fore and asked if I wanted another blanket. I'm fine, I whispered. And then I thought of that money, the money that should have been there the moment I walked into that ER. Instead, it was hanging around my daughter-in-law's neck, glinting under boutique lighting for the world to see. I thought of the bank rep's cold, clipped voice. Funds in a joint account are legally considered shared property. And in that sterile, silent room, I knew something had to change. Not another argument. Not another tearful phone call. What I needed was clarity and a decision. I could no longer let anyone take the work of my lifetime and turn it into their luxury. Before I was discharged, the doctor handed me a list: dietary changes, regular follow-ups, possible surgical options. But it was the last recommendation that stayed with me longer than the rest. Appoint a medical proxy and establish a financial control plan. That evening, I took a cab home. As we passed down Santa Monica Boulevard, I noticed a jewelry store window bright with new necklace displays, shimmering under boutique spotlights. The glow on the glass made me dizzy. I didn't ask the driver to stop. I didn't even turn my head. Back home, the house felt colder than usual. I made myself a cup of black tea, curled into my old sofa, and sat with the rising steam for a long, quiet while. For the first time, I asked myself, how do I want to live the rest of my life? Not as a mother, not as someone's open wallet, but as me. I remembered something an old colleague once told me. You don't know what trust means until the loneliness sets in. And when it does, the only person you must trust is yourself. That night, I slept deeply, not because of the medication, but because I had finally made a decision. I would protect what I had left me: body, my money, my future. And it all started with that money. A few days later, I walked into a law office for the first time. It was a cool Monday morning. Doris had given me the referral, someone she knew through her retirement community. Her name was Karen Fields, a woman in her 50s who specialized in elder law and family asset protection. She's not the warm and fuzzy type, Doris had said, slipping the firm, heavy business card into my hand. But you don't need someone to cry with, you need someone who can protect you. I kept that card in my wallet for 3 whole days before I found the nerve to call. Karen's office was on the 3rd floor of a brown-bricked building downtown. A young woman with round glasses and rapid-fire speech asked if I had an appointment. Once I gave my name, She led me into a small consultation room with dark gray carpet and a window that let in soft morning light. Karen sat behind a wood-grain desk, short hair, dark suit, no smile. "You're Evelyn Carter." "Yes," I replied. She nodded, glanced at the short intake form I'd filled out, and skipped the small talk. "You're here because your son used over $9,000 from a joint account, and you want to know if there's a way to reclaim that, correct?" I blinked, caught off guard. I want to know if I even have the right to." "You do," she said, closing the folder. "But it won't be simple. Joint accounts are legally tricky." I nodded slowly and pulled a brown envelope from my bag, placing it in front of her. "These are all the records I could find," I said softly. "That money was set aside for medical emergencies. I never touched it, but now it's been used to buy." I couldn't even bring myself to say the word necklace. Karen opened the envelope and pulled out a neat stack of documents, printed bank statements, screenshots of Social Security deposits, a handwritten ledger, and some text messages Daniel had sent. She scanned them quickly and nodded. "You did well. This is more organized than what most people bring in. A lot of clients don't even know what a joint account really means." "But, can I actually get the money back?" I asked, my voice wavering. She looked me squarely in the eyes, calm in that way only lawyers seem to be. "You can pursue a civil claim. The question is whether the transfer qualifies as unauthorized use or a non-consensual, non-gift expense. You'll need to prove that the money was not given willingly but taken." I nodded. "I never gave him permission to use it for personal luxury." "Then you have a case." She paused. "But I'm going to be honest with you, if you go down this road, even if you win, your relationship with your son may never be the same." I lowered my gaze. "Maybe. We haven't had a relationship worth saving for a long time." Karen didn't try to console me. Instead, she outlined the next steps in a measured tone. "I'll draft a formal demand letter, requesting a full accounting of how the funds were used, and asserting your ownership claim. That usually forces a response even if it's just a verbal one. We'll see if he's willing to settle. He probably won't return my calls anymore," I said quietly. "Then let the legal letter do the talking. He needs to know you're serious." I nodded. "One more thing," she added. "You need to open a new account immediately. Start reorganizing your retirement and healthcare finances. Joint accounts are legal minefields, especially for single, retired women." I looked down, ashamed. I trusted him too much. "This isn't your fault," she said, softer now as she gathered the papers. "A lot of mothers believe their children will look out for them. But the law doesn't run on love, and banks don't run on trust." When I left the office, sunlight was pouring through the hallway window. My footsteps echoed down the corridor, each one landing like a small thud against some older version of myself. A version that always gave in. A version that lived only for the needs of others. When I got home, the first thing I did was open the cabinet and pull out my old insurance folder. I used to hand all these things to Daniel. He'd say, "Don't worry, I know what I'm doing. Let me take care of it for you." And I'd believe him. But now, I was going to handle it myself. I sat at the kitchen table, combing through every clause, date, and number. My eyes burned, but with every paragraph I understood. I felt a little stronger. That night, using a template Karen had provided, I wrote a personal financial directive. It wasn't legally binding yet, but for the first time, I put into writing, no one is allowed to use any of my funds without my explicit consent, even family. After typing that line, my fingers hovered over the keyboard for a moment. That familiar wave of guilt began to rise. But this time, I didn't back down. I just whispered to myself, "This isn't selfish. It's for my own survival." On a Wednesday morning, I called Daniel. Not a voicemail. Not a text. I needed him to hear my voicito, hear the words coming from me. Not a screen. He answered slowly, his voice already tired and edged with impatience. "Mom, what is it?" "I'm in the middle of something." I didn't bother with small talk. "Starting today, I will no longer be covering your mortgage, utilities, car insurance, or any of your household bills. You and Brittany are responsible for your own life now." There was a pause on the other end. "What did you say?" His voice stalled, like he hadn't heard me right or didn't want to believe it. "I've frozen all large transfers from our joint account," I continued evenly. "And I've opened a new personal account. My Social Security and pension are now being deposited there. Are you out of your mind?" Daniel's voice spiked. "Do you even know what the market's like right now? Mortgage rates are through the roof. I can't carry this alone. I carried it alone for 30 years, I said, cutting him off. He went quiet for a few seconds, then let out a bitter laugh. This is Karen, isn't it? That lawyer. And Doris behind this too, isn't she? What the hell do they know? I didn't answer. Then his voice snapped, sharp and frayed. Do you even realize what you're doing? You're destroying this family. You're wrecking your granddaughter's life. Do you think she'll keep going to her private school? Keep doing extracurriculars? You're okay watching her suffer just to prove a point? Lily's name still pulled at something inside me. But I steadied myself. Don't drag a child into this. Her well-being is your responsibility. Yours and Brittany's. Not mine. There was a sharp breath on the other end, and then Brittany's voice rang out, clear and scathing. She just doesn't want to pay anymore. Stop playing the martyr. I closed my eyes and tightened my grip on the phone. Daniel started again, his voice spiraling into a tangle of guilt-tripping accusations, emotional pleas like wave after wave of cold water crashing over me. You weren't like this before, Mom. You used to help with everything. You always said your whole life was for me, for this family. And now you're just walking away. I pressed the end call button. His voice was still going. But I didn't listen. The phone buzzed in my hand, calls coming in again and again. I watched the screen until the name finally faded into silence. I took a deep breath, set the phone aside, and opened my laptop. I logged into the bank's online portal. One last time, I checked the balance of our joint account. I felt no anger, no grief, only clarity. I clicked remove authorization. A confirmation prompt popped up. Without hesitation, I hit confirm. The screen refreshed. The familiar numbers and names disappeared. I leaned back in the chair and closed my eyes for a long time. The breeze pushed through the white curtains. Light shifted across the floor, like a door slowly closing behind me. After lunch, I went to the bank. I cut up the old debit card with my name on it and handed the pieces to the teller. I asked them to cancel all auto payments linked to the joint account. When the paperwork was done, I stood at the door for a while. Across the street sat an old coffee shop I knew well. The same one where, last winter, I'd taken Lily for hot cocoa. She'd spilled it on her dress, and I kept apologizing, but the barista just smiled, brought her a new one, and gave her a cookie on the house. I walked over, opened the door, and ordered a black coffee. I sat by the window, in the corner seat, and pulled out my notebook. I began to write, April 17th. I will no longer pay Daniel's mortgage or subsidize his household. I will no longer pay his way. Not because I don't love him, but because I've finally learned to love myself. As I wrote, I let out a long breath. It felt like setting down a weight I'd carried for decades. The coffee was bitter, but warmer than I expected. Daniel never called me again. To be precise, I became the one whose calls wouldn't go through. Every text I sent after that day disappeared into silence. Every call was either declined or disconnected immediately. 3 days later, a message popped up on my screen. You have been added to the recipient's block list. I stared at that small line of text for a long time. Then I opened Facebook, only to find that Brittany had blocked me too. Even Lily's photos gone. It wasn't yelling, or accusations, or angry voicemails. It was silence. A silence so complete, it hit like a blunt object to the chest. The little girl who used to come every weekend for lunch had vanished. Her favorite strawberry oatmeal still sat in my cupboard. Her crayon drawing of Super Grandma, a Christmas gift from last year, was still stuck on my fridge, curling at the corners. I couldn't bring myself to take it down. No one told me if she'd caught a cold recently, or whether she'd switched schools. The girl who once sang off-key in my kitchen had been erased, like someone had cut her out of my life with a clean, cruel knife. Nights were the hardest. The family sitcoms on TV made me feel worse, not better. I avoided neighbors walking their dogs. When Doris invited me to the community theater rehearsal, I told her I wasn't feeling well. And I wasn't. It wasn't the kind of illness you could measure with a thermometer. It was a heaviness of stone pressed against my chest, my stomach, the entire outline of my body. There were moments when I faltered, when I nearly picked up the phone and said, I'm sorry. Maybe I overreacted. Can we go back to how things were? But I bit my tongue. Not because I didn't miss them, God knows I did, but because I knew, if I gave in now, there would never be another chance to stand my ground. Karen heard the hesitation in my voice during one of our follow-ups. You can't let loneliness trick you into giving up your boundaries, she said. This isn't about not loving them. This is about finally learning how to love yourself. She gave me the name of a trust attorney and said it was time to consider revising my estate plan. That's how I met Gina Wilson, a calm-spoken, sharp-minded trust officer who listened intently and never once interrupted. After hearing my situation, she got straight to the point. You still have some liquid assets and property value. I recommend creating a basic trust, assigning both a beneficiary and a trustee. That way, no one can exploit your estate. Can I name my granddaughter as the beneficiary? I asked. Absolutely, she nodded. And you can add a clause that limits access until she turns 18. The trust company will oversee its use until then. When she's of age, the remainder transfers directly to her. I paused, then slowly wrote down her name. Lily. I wrote it carefully, each letter deliberate. But my handwriting didn't shake. That afternoon, I went to the bank again. I transferred a portion of my remaining retirement funds into a health savings account earmarked strictly for medical emergencies and ongoing care. The teller handed me a detailed plan summary. I read through it 3 times, asked all the questions I needed to, and when I signed my name at the bottom, I felt maybe for the first time in a long time like I was officially responsible for myself. That night, back home, I pulled out the insurance binder. Daniel used to say he'd found me the best value plan, and I never questioned it. I'd let him handle everything. Now, page by page, I went through it, and I was stunned. The plan barely covered my prescriptions. The ER deductible was sky high. Dental wasn't included at all. I remember sitting under my desk lamp, circling item after item like a college student preparing for finals. No dental coverage. Limited formulary for prescriptions. Emergency room copay exceeds cap. And that's when the truth hit me. I hadn't ignored my health all these years because I was careless. I had handed it off. To my son. To my family. To someone who never actually cared about it. That stops now. I organized every document policies, trust papers, account summaries labeled each folder, and placed them in a newly purchased locking drawer. I didn't give anyone the key. That night, I set a new bottle of heart supplements on my nightstand. But I didn't lie awake. Instead, I dreamed. Lily was in the back seat of an old car, singing her favorite nursery rhyme, turning around just long enough to flash me a bright, familiar smile. In the dream, she said, "Grandma, when I grow up, I want to be brave like you." The days slipped by, quiet and slow, until one afternoon I noticed something on the community bulletin board that made me stop in my tracks. A blue flyer, tacked to the old oak tree near the park's announcement board. At the top, in bold letters, it read, "Have you ever been treated like an ATM?" I stood there staring at that sentence for several long seconds. It didn't sting. It didn't hurt. It felt like someone had finally switched on a light in the middle of a nightmare I'd been fumbling through alone. It was a Friday. The sun was bright, and leaves were tumbling across the ground in crisp little whirlwinds. I sat on a bench for a long while, the flyer's details still fresh in my mind. Eventually, I pulled out my phone and took a photo of the contact number and address. The meeting was scheduled for the following Wednesday, in a small conference room behind the local library. I didn't register in advance. I just showed up. That afternoon, I walked into a warm little room, nothing fancy. The heating turned up high, the chairs mismatched but clean. About a dozen women sat in a loose circle. Some cradled coffee mugs, others flipped through pamphlets. Most had gray or white hair, but all of them looked unmistakably alive. "Welcome," a woman in an orange sweater said, smiling at me. "First time." I nodded and took a seat in the corner. The meeting began with no introductions, no podium, no rigid agenda. People simply took turns, sharing stories. My daughter added my name to her business license the year I retired. Said I'd be an investor. Turns out she used my credit for loans. 5 years later, the company went under. I was left with $100,000 debt. My grandson took my savings to invest in crypto. Said it was for my financial freedom. My ex-husband used our old joint account to pay for his new wife's plastic surgery. Some stories made people laugh. Some brought tears that made others reach for tissues. I didn't speak that day. I just listened for 2 full hours. After the meeting, a woman named Martha approached me. "You didn't talk today," she said, "but I saw your face. I know that look." I nodded. "I'm still learning how to start." She patted my shoulder gently. "There's no rush. Sometimes, just being heard even in silence is enough." From that day forward, I went every week. We shared stories, swapped resources, helped each other draft documents. We formed a little ad hoc group to review bank structures, update insurance beneficiaries, flag predatory language in scam calls. Over time, I got to know the others. And for the first time, I stopped feeling like I was in this fight alone. At one meeting, I finally spoke about the necklace. I didn't cry over the money. I said, I cried because that necklace was what they thought I was worth. The room fell quiet for a moment. Then someone said, we understand. It's never about the thing. It's about the dignity it takes away. I nodded. My throat tightened, but I didn't cry. That night, I didn't go straight to bed. I rummaged through an old drawer and found a boxed art Sita gift from my co-workers on Nurses Week. Years ago. I had never opened it. I unwrapped the plastic, unrolled a sheet of canvas paper, and began sketching that room in the library. The circle of women. Their quiet strength. My strokes were slow, but steady. Surprisingly steady. The next day, I printed the drawing onto a small card and brought it to the next meeting. Martha took it in her hands, smiling. This belongs on the wall in our meeting room. I nodded. There's just enough space for it. In that moment, I realized something. I was still here, and I wasn't alone anymore. A few weeks ago, I might have hesitated. But now, sitting in Karen's gray-blue office chair, I signed the documents without a flicker of doubt. We're officially initiating a civil recovery claim, she said, sliding the paperwork into an envelope. Our goal is clear acclaim funds from your joint account that were spent on non-gift-related expenses. The necklace, dining, entertainment, these all fall under our claimable scope. She spoke with the steady clarity of a surgeon walking someone through a procedure calm. Efficient, clinical. I nodded as she talked, not with nerves, but with a quiet certainty I hadn't expected to feel. Karen looked up. You're very calm. I let out a small smile. I spent 30 years in operating rooms. There's not a kind of rupture I haven't seen. But this time, she said with a faint softness, you're the one doing the cutting. Severing an unequal relationship can hurt more than any scalpel. I didn't respond, just looked out the window. The sky was gray in the distance. It felt like rain. On my way home from the firm, I stopped by the corner store and picked up a box of animal-shaped cookies, Lily's favorite. I didn't know when I'd see her again. I didn't even know if she'd receive it. But I decided to write her a letter anyway. No blame. No adult complications. Just something to let her know her grandma hadn't stopped thinking about her. Dear Lily, I've been painting a lot lately. You'd probably say the colors are too soft. You always liked pink. I remember. Grandma lives closer to the park now. Outside my window are 2 tall trees. I named them Charlie and Mabel. They listen to the birds sing with me every morning. I miss you. I hope you're eating well, sleeping well, and still dancing around, singing those funny songs with the wrong lyrics. I'm not beside you not because I don't love you, but because grown-up things can get messy. Still, I want you to know, no matter what happens, Grandma will always love you. With all my heart. Grandma. I packed the letter and the cookies into a small parcel and mailed it to her school address, marked private for addressee only. But I knew the truth. Whether she actually got it wasn't up to me. Then, a few days later, my phone rang. A number I didn't recognize. Grandma. Lily's voice came through quiet, almost trembling with held-back excitement. It's me, I said, sitting down, trying to keep my voice steady. How are you, sweetheart? I'm okay, she sniffled. I miss you. My throat tightened. I miss you too, darling. She hesitated, then asked softly. Daddy said you're mad because we took a lot of your money. Is that true? I paused. That's not your fault, I said gently. Sometimes grown-up things get messy, but you should always know I left a door open for you. You're welcome to walk through it any time. She was quiet for a moment, then whispered. Mom doesn't want me saying stuff like this, but I don't want to lie to you. I closed my eyes. Thank you for telling me. Then, as only a child can, she shifted the subject. I still have that blanket you gave Meth, one with my name on it. I sleep with it every night. That one's yours forever, I said, smiling. Just like the spot you hold in my heart. No one else could ever take it. We spoke for 10 minutes. No talk of lawsuits. No talk of the necklace. Just 10 minutes to remind her that no matter how messy things got, the string between us was still intact then. Maybe, but glowing. After we hung up, I took a deep breath and called the hospital. I scheduled a full physical and a cardiology follow-up. I wasn't afraid of being wheeled into the ER again. I'd prepared all my documents, revised my advance directive, designated a new emergency contact, and medical proxy no longer Daniel. Now, it was Martha. I printed 3 copies, one for the hospital, one taped inside my fridge door, and one locked in my drawer. That night, I went to bed early. I dreamed I was standing alone in a courtroom. No one in the audience stood beside me, but I wasn't afraid, because this time, I knew exactly who I was fighting for. The courtroom was colder than I'd expected. Gray walls, thick carpet, and a silence so dense that even a cough echoed like a crack. Karen sat beside me, laying out the thick stack of documents on the table, flipping through each page with soft confirmations. "We're not pursuing criminal charges," she said as she organized the exhibits. "Our goal is straightforward, recovering the unauthorized expenditures. The necklace, the luxury purchases, and a few questionable transfers." I nodded. "I don't want this to turn into some mother-son war." She glanced at me. "This was never about being his mother. It's about money. And respect." Daniel walked in just then, Brittany a step behind him. He wore a suit, clearly trying to look composed, though his eyes held a flicker of wariness. Brittany, on the other hand, looked relaxed, almost smug. She gave me a little nod before sitting down, a smile curling on her lips. "Nice seeing you again," she murmured. I didn't answer. The judge struck the gavel, and the room fell into order. Karen rose first. Her voice was clear and precise. No dramatics, no embellishments, just facts. She laid it out cleanly: the joint account, the transaction logs, my consistent deposits over the years, the unauthorized withdrawals, and finalized receipt for the diamond necklace. Daniel leaned into his attorney, whispered something, then stood. "My mother made it clear that money was meant for family emergencies," he said. "I understood that to mean she supported us. She never once said the funds were restricted." His tone was measured, but his expression, entitlement, pure and simple. Then Brittany took the stand. She moved like she was walking a runway, not stepping into a court of law. "Evelyn has always said she wanted to help us," she said, voice laced with saccharine. "She told us, 'You are my everything,' and now she's calling us thieves. It's hard to understand." She paused, then added softly, "If we made any mistake, it was trusting her love too much." I didn't make a sound, but Karen's pen paused on her notepad. When it was my turn, I stood slowly and took hold of the mic. My voice didn't shake. It was steadier than I imagined it could be. "I have never denied the love and effort I poured into my family," I said. "I gave everything: tuition, mortgage, insurance. Every time there was a need, I filled it without hesitation. But today, I'm here because I finally understand something. My willingness to give you everything doesn't give you the right to take it without asking." I glanced at Daniel. He looked down, didn't meet my eyes. "That money was my safety net." I continued. "That joint account existed because I trusted you, and you used it to buy a diamond necklace for someone who won't even look me in the eye." My voice remained even. That was the moment I woke up. Brittany turned her head slightly, a flicker of disdain on her face. "I'm not a perfect mother. Maybe I talk too much. Maybe I forgave too easily. But I am not an ATM," I said. "I raised you to be accountable, to have dignity, not to treat me like a debit card you can drain." The courtroom fell into a hush. When I sat down, Karen gave me a small nod. During the recess, I stepped out into the hallway and took a long, steady breath. Behind me, I heard murmurs from a few spectators, and then unexpectedly a woman about my age approached. "What you said in there," she said quietly. "It was brave. I've thought those words 100 times, but I've never dared say them out loud." I nodded. I didn't respond. Instead, I walked slowly through the heavy doors of the courthouse. The sun outside was warm, laying across the back of my hand with a gentle weight. I didn't know yet if I'd win the case, but I knew this much: I'd won something far more important. I had spoken the truth. The kind Daniel didn't want to hear. The kind I had spent too many years swallowing. The verdict came down on a gray Monday morning. I wore my sea blue wool coat as I walked into the courthouse. Karen had arrived ahead of me, already waiting at the steps with a folder in hand. "There won't be any big surprises today," she said, flipping through the documents. Their attorney filed to withdraw part of the counterclaim. That's essentially an admission of defeat. I nodded without a word. My heart wasn't racing like it had the first time. I wasn't angry, either. Just steady, like someone standing in the eye of a storm that was finally beginning to break. The hearing lasted less than 20 minutes. The judge's statement was brief and to the point. Several expenditures from the joint account were ruled as unauthorized personal use under the statutes governing asset division. Daniel was ordered to repay the full amount, including the purchase cost of the diamond necklace plus court-assessed interest. Brittany was barred from further access to the account. She didn't say a word, her face pale. Daniel sat with his head lowered. When the judgment was read, he didn't react right away. He simply looked up slowly, his gaze landing on me. And in that moment, I saw not just my son but the boy I once held in my arms, now sitting across from me as the defendant. But I didn't feel soft. Yes, he's my son, but I am not just his mother. I am a person. I have the right not to be taken from, not to be controlled, not to be treated as an afterthought. Outside the courthouse, Karen and I stood by the steps. I hugged her. It was the first time I had initiated contact with anyone in months. You fought for yourself, she whispered, and you won it back. I nodded. Now I intend to keep it. On the way home, I didn't rush to shake off the emptiness. Instead, I let it settle around me while the jazz station played softly in the background. Outside the car window, traffic flowed like a movie I wasn't part of. That was when it hit me. Real freedom doesn't come with applause. It comes in quiet. A few days later, I went to the bank not just to cut up a card, but to sever myself completely from the account. I formally submitted the paperwork to remove my name from the joint account and canceled all remaining authorizations. That afternoon, I sat at my kitchen table for nearly 2 hours, with sunlight spilling in through the blinds. I sorted through every transaction, circled each recipient's name in red, and wrote notes in the margins. It wasn't bookkeeping. It was closure. That evening, Daniel sent me a message. Just one line. Mom, can we talk? I stared at it for a long time. Then I simply locked the screen. I didn't block him, but I didn't reply either. The next morning, I removed his number from my emergency contacts. I replaced it with Martha's. Later that week, I visited my insurance company. I updated my beneficiary information. Where it used to read Daniel Carter, I now wrote, Lily Carter. The agent glanced up as I signed. Is she your granddaughter? I smiled. Yes. She's 7. She has a long way ahead of her. That's very forward-thinking of you. It's not foresight, I said quietly. It's finally understanding that I can't build my future around people who don't care if I have one. I didn't hesitate as I signed. I wasn't the mother waiting in a kitchen for people to come home. I wasn't the woman waiting to be asked, to be thanked, to be seen. I was done waiting. I had started moving. That night, I turned off the lights early. Before bed, I clicked on my little reading lamp and opened my journal. June 25th. I reclaimed my autonomy, no longer indebted to the name of motherhood. I closed the book gently, with only one thought in my heart. It's finally my turn. I never imagined that the real beginning of a happy and free life in old age wouldn't come with retirement, the birth of a grandchild, or even the death of a spouse. It came one morning when I was sitting on the balcony of my quiet little apartment, holding a fresh cup of Earl Grey, watching the newly painted mural across the street at the Art Center. And in that moment, without waiting for a message from anyone, I felt, for the first time, that being alive was something that truly belonged to me. This is a retirement community near the edge of Sonoma County, designed for creative seniors. Every unit comes with its own workspace, and the sunlight pours in like it's trying to fill your soul. During my first week here, a neighbor teased, "Did you move here to watch the clouds, or to paint them?" I smiled and said, "Both." The walls began to fill up quickly. What started with colored pencil sketches grew into acrylic collages and abstract layers. Outside my door hangs a handwritten sign that says, "Do not disturb, the old lady is rewriting herself." One afternoon, Martha brought a few new friends from the community over to visit. She held a tray of homemade muffins and paused at the door of my studio, eyes wide. "Evelyn," she gasped, "you made all of these recently." I nodded. She grinned. "You do know you're only 68, right? We've still got 30 years ahead of us." I smiled, but said nothing. Later, I scribbled her words on the back of a canvas. It was a recreation of a drawing Lily had sent me. She'd drawn a flying cat, and underneath, in her careful little letters, she wrote, "Grandma, are you like this cat now? All free." It was her second letter in the past few weeks. She'd filled the page with stars in colored pencil, and taped a card inside that spelled out a sentence cut from pressed paper. "I miss you. Dad doesn't like you, but I still do." I cried when I read it. I wrote her back, avoiding every adult issue, simply telling her, "You loving me is the luckiest thing that's ever happened to me." Here, in the quiet rhythm of my new life, I've learned things I never had time for before. I learned to take my medications properly, not like a routine chore, but by understanding what they do and why I need them. I learned how to say no even to old friends who wanted to drag me to health supplement sales pitches. I learned how to remember not to let the past rule me, but like pulling out an old vinyl record, gently placing it on the turntable, and letting it spin. Last month, I received an insurance reimbursement for my hospital stay after the angina attack. The deposit hit my account with exact precision down to the last cent. It was the same amount as that diamond necklace. I laughed softly and said to myself, now that's what real security looks like. I never reached out to Daniel again. He sent one more message asking to meet. I looked at it once and set the phone down. I'm not angry anymore. I no longer feel the need to repair something that was never built on mutual respect. I've learned that some relationships don't need fixing, they need farewell. I kept one thing from him, a card he made when he was 7, scribbled in crayon. I love my mom the most. Her macaroni is the best in the whole world. I didn't throw it away. It stays in the top drawer of my desk, next to Lily's drawings. They're not burdens. They're proof. Proof that I once loved with everything I had, and now I've learned to love myself just as fully. That evening, during our community book circle, I read a short piece I'd written aloud. I ended with these words: motherhood is a choice, not a duty. I finally learned that sacrificing myself isn't the price of love. Respect is the light that guides my later years. The most important lesson of my old age isn't forgiveness. It's self-love. When I finished, I looked up. There was a quiet pause, and then applause. In that moment, I wasn't someone's mother. I wasn't someone's ATM. I was me, Evelyn Carter. Whole, free, and finally, mine.